Okay, this is a large subject, so I'll get straight into it. Basically, this comes from an internal study that's been done, and basically the reason why it was done is because our organisation, working in 42 countries, works in 20 countries which have problems with insecurity, governance and conflict. So this came out of the ground reality that much of the disaster risk management methodology has been developed under stable contexts, and that certain methodologies and certain actors are a little bit reticent to try and see this done in more difficult contexts. So today I'd like to try and see how we could also break down a silo approach between agencies doing conflict initiatives and those with disaster risk management. I'd like to give a bit of a vision about how we can push the IHAGO framework for action to a more open vision of what we deal with risk. It's not just about natural hazards, or a panorama of other risks as well. And in a sense, go beyond a yes or no answer whether we can do risk management to think about a graduated system of action that's based on certain thresholds. When you pass those thresholds, what you do, the way you do it, and how you do it changes. And try to go from policy and practice in 15 minutes, which is probably impossible. And a thing that we find when we're doing field assessments that in the end, people on the ground don't differentiate between risk management, climate change adaptation, all these different approaches that we put into boxes. They have a range of different needs, and many of those approaches, there's common ways of dealing with those needs. Close it? Okay. Why is this important? I'll just take a few facts from the latest World Bank report and the latest UNDP report that tried to look at the dynamics of conflict and the dynamics of risk and conflict. And basically, you know, 1 in 4 people are in insecure contexts. What we're seeing is that the nature of conflict is changing. It's more complex, and we're seeing cyclical conflict and insecurity, which mirrors that of natural hazards. Tellingly, I mean, basically of these countries vulnerable to insecurity, none of them have reached the single MDG goals. So when we talk about addressing vulnerability, we have large problems here. And basically, the UNDP study showed that the risk to natural disaster, it dramatically increases due to conflict, but that also large disaster is further fueling conflict in itself. So it'd be good to try and attach both dynamics. And from what I've seen on the ground, the role of risk management, people see that the enabling factors are not there, that you cannot work with the government directly, that you may not have a full participation of community, that they can't look beyond their immediate humanitarian needs, they can't start taking risks and experimentation with their livelihoods. So people perhaps say, well, we can't do it. On the other hand, the range of organisations that are trying to manage conflict, and they're perhaps very much focused on the conflict and maybe forget about some of these external shocks that can actually drive conflict in itself. So this, very basically, I see insecurity as a massive cycle. So this whole cycle can be 20, 30 years, and basically it shows that there's a zone where, in number one, where it's what we call complex humanitarian emergencies. So today I'm really going to talk about those 10 or 15 years, just before complex emergencies start, during it, where we go forwards in time and backwards as the intensity of conflict increases and decreases. This sort of mini cycle is very difficult to manage operationally. And when we exit a complex humanitarian emergency, that we go into what's called post-conflict. And there's a 40% chance that a context can drop back into a complex humanitarian emergency. So everything I'm going to talk about today focuses on that first zone. Number one. And I asked 3 questions when I was doing this study. Is basically, how can we make disaster risk management more conflict sensitive to make sure that we're not going to harm people? How do we hazard-proof those conflict programming from external shocks that can be due to natural hazards, it can be due to market shocks, it can be due to a whole range of different shocks. And I was trying to look at those types of programming to see if there's overlaps. And the aim is to try and have a more efficient program and to be trying to deal with a range of different issues at the same time. And basically, if we zoom in on what that complex humanitarian emergencies looks like, this is the risk architecture. On one hand, we have a range of threats that are linked to the conflict and insecurity. This is the top part of the diagram. On the lower part, we also see there's a range of external shocks that have different cyclicity, and that both of these are also driven by a range of factors, including climate change, environmental degradation, including economic marginalisation, urbanisation, and problems with governance. So in effect, in programming, this is the architecture that we have to navigate, and this is, I've tried to look at the programming that tries to take all this into account. So basically, it's about building on better. There's been a lot of things done. These are some of the different methodologies that have tried to look at risk, that have tried to look at in insecure contexts. There's a range of insecurity programming that some humanitarian agencies may be familiar with. So I've tried to look at all these, look at the overlaps and look at the common features. So that's a lot of work. So I'm going to just drop straight down into programming. I'm going to forget about concepts, and I just want to give some real operational ground-based tips. These are preliminary tips that has to be expanded, but I just want to race through these to give you an idea about what we need to be thinking of changing. And basically, when I looked at the commonalities, there are 4 axes of commonalities. These are the 4 commonalities. It's about building confidence and collective action. And these are useful for both risk management and for managing conflict. So we're working on social cohesion. The second one is really trying to do multi-sectoral programming and trying to better link communities with local actors and government. We need to also reduce external stresses, and really there's a central core of livelihoods that are common to these different types of programming. And both programming, we're really trying to provide incentives for change. So the first programming tip, basically we have to put conflict sensitive and do no harm at the heart of disaster risk management if we want to do this. And what this actually means concretely, it means that when we're doing our analysis, that we have to have a much better preparation in terms of analysis of power and the political economy. We have to be very careful that there's an extra protection step in our assessment methodology, our PCVA methodology. And because we're dealing with a range of different factors, we have to think about a multi-phase PCVA, and that means having a significant preparation step, a political step, a power analysis step, followed by a lightweight overview. And after that lightweight overview, when you send people in the field, you're able to lead a decision about whether you want to work on specific issues going to a lot greater depth, be it gender, be it climate change, be it whatever. There's a greater emphasis on disaggregation, and the dynamic of vulnerable groups under conflict is different than what we see under stable environments, and really the security is paramount to everyone. The second one is that we have to look beyond who we normally work with disaster risk management. Basically, if government fails to take its responsibility or cannot, then we have to look at a range of different consortia. There are some agencies that are expert in human rights and the conflict negotiation. There are some that are technical experts, and there are some that are experts in mobilising community. We have to change the focus of scale of DRM. If the conflict is internal to a community, how can we base our methodology on community-based and community-managed methodology? We have to start looking at a household methodology. The scale may change. We have to get realistic about what we expect from communities. So we have to do a very definitive analysis of the participatory approach, and we have to be realistic about what communities, how much they can participate at different steps. When I think about methodology, I think about a graduated response from direct intervention to community-based to community-managed, and each one of these has a range of different characteristics and expectations. Where's the money going to come from? Who's going to do the planning? It changes across the spectrum, and we should try and fit the community's ability to the context, and not just go for community-based this and community-manage that. we have to change emphasis on sustainability. We have to merge short-term and long-term aims within programming, and this is common towards risk management and to conflict programming. We can use the neutrality of natural disasters as an entry point to perhaps start dealing with other issues and to build cohesion. And there's an emphasis on portable technology when we're in these contexts as well, even more than what we'd like in stable contexts. We have refugee camps, we have displaced people. Managing uncertainty, I see great parallels in managing climate change uncertainty and managing the uncertainty of conflict and political processes. So again, a key thing is to merge all types of early warning systems, political systems, hunger systems, natural hazard systems, and to build all sorts of contingency planning in your own programming. Extra time, the ability to flip into different remote programming modalities, all this has to be taken into account. Unfortunately, there's a great political dimension, and we have to be very careful that what we do and how we're perceived isn't perceived as being political. Otherwise, we risk everyone's safety. So there are great problems in terms of humanitarian space and conditionality of humanitarian aid. We have to be very careful of the politicisation of aid when we're doing risk management as well in these types of contexts. Perhaps one of the biggest things I want to that came out of this is that it's not a yes/no what we do. It's looking at a contextual threshold to be able to take different decisions according to how the context changes. I won't go to this into detail, but what this shows is that there are 5 intensities of conflict, moving from high intensity to the middle to the outside, which is low intensity. And we have to acknowledge that our different objectives for risk management and the different approaches that we're going to use are going to be appropriate under different intensity of conflict and the time frame at which that intensity happens. So we have to modulate according to the context, the way we do business and what we're going to do. It may lead to something like this to show you that basically in terms of major objectives in terms of risk management, that we're going to change the way we do planning to understand that we can do some things at certain times according to context indicators, and other times we have to be a lot more humble. 9th tip is to open our vision. We have to, in terms of, I don't care if we're doing humanitarian operations, short-term operations, we have to open our vision towards the past, towards the future, and also to understand that there are large linkages between long-term phenomena and short-term conflicts. So we have to open all our tools, not to be snapshots, but to negotiate space and time. Lastly, advocacy is important. Unfortunately, there's a whole range of different trends for the future that talk about a different type of conflict, and non-state actors that talk about aid as a political tool, that talk about decreasing humanitarian space. So we need to open our vision of advocacy, not just about climate change, not just about risk management, but also about those factors dealing with conflict. And to be able to do those two is very difficult for one organisation. So again, it's a group effort. So lastly, this is just a first pass rapid mapping. You can understand I've gone over a lot of terrain in synthesis. The next step is, and it's really, I'm aiming to look at joint programming, and the next steps are really to look at how we can do, what a joint programming platform would look like between managing conflict and managing all aspects of risk, to be able to really upgrade the existing field tools around a project and program cycle, and to really see and join with the conflict community to see how we can join together and to understand who can do what and who has added value. And at the end, it's really to take all that knowledge and to disseminate it at a ground level. So I'd just like to say thanks for your attention. There was a lot of information there. I tried to flip a lot of ideas at you, and you can go back and look at this presentation in more detail to have a look at this. So thanks very much for your attention, and these are my contact details. "30 seconds for a question or comment. Basically, just the last message. What I'm going to do is this paper, which has been also funded with CARE, it will be published. I'm hoping to run 2 open days in London and Geneva, same as these practical action days, to allow a whole range of different actors to come in, to get some key speakers from those key approach areas to come in and to try and look at different field examples about how DRR methodology has been modified, and to also get some of the conflict programming community to come in and give their vision about how they deal with livelihoods. So look for this to come up. It'll be advertised. Thank you.